Okay, so welcome everybody. November 15th, project team meeting. We'll be here as long as we need to be here, but it won't be past 6:30, I promise. And we'll let our presenting members head out earlier. Our cadre pilot team can head out as soon as we have our first break. So tonight we are going to talk about centering our work again, and then we will look at the updates from our French and Spanish teachers. We'll see some comments from our teachers on a recent survey that they took. We'll look at some student feedback, and then we'll talk about the next steps as a project team. So Toshiko, do you want to go over the next couple of slides for us?
Sure. I think by now, hopefully you have these questions, the equity lens questions, somewhat memorized, or maybe an idea of them. And as you're looking through materials or listening to presentations, just making sure that we're centering our decisions on these equity lens questions. So how many slides? I'm sorry, Carol, how many more slides do you have of this one?
Yeah, just this one.
Just this one.
We're just going to talk about, I don't know, we're going to go into breakout rooms.
Okay, so
in just a minute. So
yeah, I just wanted to remind everybody that so we all know that the purpose of this whole world language adoption, right, is to adopt materials that are high quality, that really supports the acquisition of a language, and hopefully get our students to obtain biliteracy or multiliteracy skills, right, where they're able to actually read, write, speak, and listen in that target language. That is the hope, that is the goal. We want our students to be multilingual, bilingual, so that they're able to really navigate the global world that we're living in. And so when we started this process, and for those of you who are part of the cadre, you guys did a lot of work. You did a lot of research around the sound educational theories around language acquisition, right? And then you created a position paper synthesizing that research. And then from there, you created guiding principles, right? And then you also looked at the best practices, the instructional practices, the pedagogy that is going to, of what you would do to implement all of that, the guiding principles and the research. So it kind of started out with looking at the research, synthesizing it to a position paper, creating guiding principles, putting them into themes, and then creating the instructional practices that you're going to use to deliver those guiding principles. And so as you're listening to these presentations and you're looking at the materials, just making sure that whatever we're looking at and deciding on really aligns with the position paper, the research, the guiding principles, and the best practices. So just wanted to keep that at the forefront. And you have these guiding principles here, you know, multilingualism, purposeful, equitable assessment, making sure that the curriculum does these things, really encourages that communicative competence, authentic text and digital resources, not just canned text, right? That you're actually able to authentic text, making sure that the curriculum provides that global perspective. Also that it incorporates culture. As we all know, you know, language, culture, and identity are all interwoven in there. So making sure that our curriculum adoption materials do that. And then our last guiding principle is that equity and student voice. Do the materials really push for that student voice to come out?
Awesome. So what we're going to do really quick as we consider our guiding principles is we're going to go into a breakout room, and I'm going to just create these. Okay. Welcome, Caleb. Good to have you. We're going to go into a breakout room. You might be in with 2 or 3 people total. And we're going to think about these 7 principles. I dropped into the chat the 1-pager so that you have, oh yeah, I'll give you access to it if you don't have it. Well, I'm dropping into the chat this 1-pager so that you kind of have the 7 guiding principles right there in front of you as you go into your breakout rooms. And then what you'll do is just look at those principles and think of those guiding principles and think about which one stands out to you right now. Because I feel like even during different times in this process, I've really felt like, oh, this one is really one that I want to hit on really hard or think about or reflect on. And then I think that's changed as we've gone throughout this process. So as of right now, where you're at tonight in this whole process of whether you're piloting, whether you're on the project team or the cadre or a student, to really just take a moment to think, well, which one's really speaking to you right now? And then just talk about that with either your partner or within your triad. So I will open all of the rooms. Oh gosh, Betsy and Karen, I put you together. Go for
I
it.
just did not now. Do you want me to go into, do you want to move me somewhere else?
Let's see. I might. Yeah, let me actually move both of you in with Kim and Lucinda,
Okay, thanks.
or I'll move Betsy somewhere else, but I'm going to move you to room 5. Thanks. Okay, and then I'm going to share this and make sure it's shareable. Anyone with link can view. Done. Okay. And then Betsy's by herself in a room. So we're going to move her to room 3. She wouldn't want to be by herself. Now, all right, welcome back. You must have been in good conversations because nobody came back early. Anything stand out? Anyone want to share kind of what guiding principle is speaking to them at the moment?
I'll just, Claire had shared, I mean, I think we were all kind of like, they're all important. It was Claire and Tashiko and I, but I think Claire brought up having the authentic resources and digital resources is really important. And we talked about just representing like the diversity of the different Spanish or French speaking countries in the texts. Because they are very diverse, even within the countries themselves, but also across the world as far as, yeah.
Right.
I think something that it seems like in the past we've done a lot of focusing on number 3, the communicative competence. But I think that maybe this next generation of textbook, of curriculum, and the research that we've done in the last year or so seems to kind of point to a broader kind of purpose for world language classes, maybe. And that, you know, I think that also the Vista and the Wayside they've prioritized these competing things a little bit differently, maybe. But that our traditional world language classroom maybe was more focused on 3, and now we're sort of asking, how much should we give time and energy to these other things as well?
Yeah, that's very true. All right, well, the next slides, I won't go back to sharing my screen because I will let the French and Spanish teams share theirs. So what's next on the agenda is to hear from some of our teachers who are piloting both Vista and Wayside resources. So Claire, we're gonna let you go first because I know you need to get out the door. And we'll hear from you, whatever you want to share with us as far as your experience so far in the pilot. And Claire is one of our French teachers over at Westview. And are you shared? Mountainside, right? Yeah. So that awesome. Go ahead.
Okay. All right. So I'm going to go ahead and get started here. And the first time I presented in a while. So minimize this. And There we are. Okay. So I piloted Vista Chemin 1, and I used this in my French 1 class. And just to give a little background for those who are not familiar, French is not taught in the middle school, so I get them for the first time. For many of my students, it's their first exposure to French. So I'm hoping that the little mini lesson that I shared is going to be pretty easy for anybody who doesn't speak French. So I'm going to be going over the unique features, curriculum strengths, some wishes, and a little mini lesson example. So what I really liked about Vista's online program is that it integrates well with Canvas, which is the system that we use for assigning things to students. It's where our class websites are, it's where our syllabi are. Students can see their graded items in there so they can check their grades. So it's pretty nice that Vista does interact with the Canvas feature, so they can be, individual assignments. As you can see here, all I have to do is just click on a couple of buttons within Canvas to link to a specific activity. I can also just create a link to all current assignments. So it will give students all of the activities for that day, if that's what you prefer to do. And I can include a link directly to VHL Central, either through the modules or on the side of Canvas, which is a pretty nice feature. And VHL Central is essentially the super site where students can access the online textbook, they can access vocabulary cards, they can access some supplemental resources, but it's also a place where teachers have access to way more information and resources than the students, and we can select which items we want to share with the students by customizing our VHL Central super site. I mentioned the flashcards already. Can you tell I like them? So within the super site, they have a flashcard option. And what I like about these is in the past, we had to rely on outside websites and programs in order to combine the flashcard utility in a digital format with the audio. One of those websites that many of us are no longer allowed to use because of security concerns for the district is that this renders that not necessary anymore. So it circumvents the security issues by being a part of an integrated program that the students have been approved to use already. So that's really nice. And these flashcards, they have an audio feature, the definition of the word. And then after the students go through the flashcards and they click on it, they can either click, I know it, like, I don't need to practice this word anymore, or they could click, not yet. And this is not for a grade, this is for independent study, and it allows students to reflect on their own learning. And what it does with the words that they have not yet learned is that they put these flashcards into more frequent rotation, and the system puts the I know it flashcards to the side. So the list over time in theory gets smaller and smaller, but they do have the option to restart the flashcards and go through all of them if they wanted to. I really like that there are different icons on the list of activities that we can assign to our students online. So for example, the apple means that it has to be teacher graded. So I know that if I have a very busy week ahead of me, that maybe an apple, is not necessarily the best activity for that week, because I would need to dedicate time to grade it quickly and provide my students with meaningful and immediate feedback. With other items that don't have the apple, those items are automatically graded, which is kind of nice. And the microphone means that you're doing an activity the students are doing an activity in which they need to record their voice. And this has been very useful for students to be able to record their voice and compare it to a native speaker's and then listen to the comparison back and forth. That is really quite lovely. You'll also see a microphone next to some paired activities with another partner. And in those activities, students can connect with each other online and they can record themselves having a conversation. So it's not just between the student and the computer, it's between two students who are actually in the classroom. And then the headphones indicate a listening activity. Yeah. And so the other activities, they have different icons. I'm not going to get into those because right now because of time, but the Apple microphone and headphones are my favorite. This is one of my favorite features, and it's recording conversations between students. So there is an activity in which the students are given a prompt and they essentially call each other in class. It can get a little noisy. So you might want to set up like a station where you do this, or maybe allow some students to go outside just to kind of break up the volume. And I can go in and I can listen to the conversation that they had based on the prompts and give them a grade. And it's up to the teacher to create a kind of rubric based on what they're looking for. But usually these types of speaking activities have very specific purposes. So for example, in this one, they are asked to combine verbs and leave the first one conjugated and then the second one in the infinitive, if that makes any sense. All right. I also like that there's a v-text online. And so students can mark up their v-text online. And in the text, you can see embedded buttons where it will either read this aloud with the little play button, or there will be a little mouse button that shows that there is a little activity connected to it, and it will open up that activity in the super site. Many texts just like this one have a read aloud, and it's very helpful for students with accommodations. So that's pretty sweet. In the grade book, you can see scores, you can see a roster of late work. You can penalize for late work. I don't, because at my schools, we are doing standards-based grading, but I do know that that is an option that some teachers like. And there are reports that you could do, and then you could do item analysis, which is pretty nice. And I created this before I knew exactly what I wanted to do with this, before I knew too much about Vista. But I'm thinking that next year, if we were to use this, that I would set up the grade book to align with our standards. And in the world language department, we are using A, B, C, and D at one school. And then we also have some more at my other school, but I'm just shortening this to A, B, C, D. So because all of the activities are hyper specific to either vocabulary or listening or speaking or reading comprehension, I'm thinking that I might possibly next year, or I might recommend that we set up our grade books, not the way I did here, but with them attached to different criteria. So I would change these to criterion A, criterion B, criterion C, criterion D. And in that way, it's really easy for the teachers to kind of keep track of what each activity is for. And it's also really helpful for students. I really like that there are news and cultural updates. It seems like this is a feature on the super site that is embedded in levels 2, 3, and 4, and it has up-to-date news. It's not a part of the textbook, and it is not a part of the unit per se. It's not attached. So the teacher would need to go in and take a look at these and see where they would like to embed these in their curriculum throughout the year. But it does seem like this is updated pretty frequently, and I like that it's leveled as well. You can see the different levels here on the right-hand side. So here are some stars. So I like that there's some all French text in the Chemin 1, Unité Préliminaire, which is kind of unique for it being the first few weeks of school. For students who have never learned French before, there's a heavy use of cognates, which I think is pretty great. Cognates are words that sound or look the same in one language and another. And there's a lot of use of footnotes with definitions of unfamiliar words. So within just a couple of weeks, I had some students not, roaring through an all French text, but they could read through it and get enough meaning from the all French paragraph. And they were right on the money with their interpretations, which is pretty cool. The curriculum frequently taps into students' prior knowledge. There are a lot of activities that ask students to connect their experiences outside of the classroom with the topic at hand. And it doesn't necessarily need to be French related. So I thought that was pretty cool that kids could feel powerful and informed with some material that they've never encountered before. And there does tend to be a diversity of French-speaking folks in the curriculum. And you can see that in the scope and sequence as you go throughout French 1 all the way through the French 4 book, the Chemin 1 through Chemin 4 book, I should say. The activities align well with our graded standards. So because everything is taught in segmented pieces, it's very clear to see that, oh, this is definitely a reading activity. It's best used for this. There's a writing activity. It's best for this. There's high quality audio and video. They're professionally done. They're clear. They're concise. It's very traditional. So vocabulary is introduced, then a dialogue video is shown, and then finally students practice the vocabulary with some kind of partner activity or worksheet type activity. Then for grammar, there's a grammar tutorial. Then students practice some worksheet type activities, and then students will do individual or partner practice. So it's very much the same. We do this, then we do this. Very regimented. So the cycle is very familiar. And I like that there are authentic videos, especially for higher levels, like the news and current events section that I showed you before. And also embedded in the culture sections in the textbook as well for the higher levels. Not as much for the level 1s. News and cultural updates, as I mentioned, great for AP and IB classes. And they include project ideas, which is kind of nice. But there needs to be a lot of input from the teacher to flesh out the rubrics and stuff like that. So curriculum wishes. So this is something I picked up as an elementary school teacher. It's things that I wish were part of the curriculum or done maybe a little better. The material tends to be in long, dense segments. So it can be visually challenging for students with ADHD and dyslexia. And material would need to be chunked. So maybe physically, I don't know, maybe the teachers would need to make photocopies and spread it out. Make the font bigger, especially for students who struggle. Maybe the online textbook would be better for some students who struggle with dyslexia, especially with the read aloud option. There aren't too many authentic materials embedded in the vocabulary and grammar sections, I noticed. They are available, but just not a part of that program. It's taught separately. And there are older students and their experiences overrepresented, I found, in the text. So mostly like college age students. They have updated over the years and have included some more pictures of younger kids, but for the majority of the situations and for the ongoing video series, it follows the life of older students. France and European French speakers are represented more frequently than non-European French speakers. For example, in a list of countries where French is spoken, they left out the Republic of Congo, and that's the country that has the city with the most French speakers in the world. References tend to be outdated, like Celine Dion, big when Titanic was out, not so much anymore. And it just needs more fun. Like it's missing online games and offline games, high school friendly images and layout. It's very dense, like I said. The assessments can be easily photocopied from the assessment book, but they can't be easily printed. For a lot of the cumulative assessments, it was difficult to find the audio for those. And questions can sometimes have more than one correct answer. So if you do want to use the online platform, there are some bugs that need to be fixed, or you definitely need to make sure that you plan it way in advance and adapt when needed. Also, you can only assign one level at a time to a book. So what that means is, for example, if you have a French 1 class and you only get up through Unit 4, and you have your level 2s that start with the Unit 5 in the first book, I'm not quite sure how you would get both of those levels online access and integration to Canvas. The integration is really the biggest issue there. So my mini lesson is going to be very mini because I'm running out of time. The one that I decided to show you today was the mini lesson on the alphabet, because again, I did the unité préliminaire, and that means the first unit, or like the pre-unit. And so here we have a link to the V text, and you can see what it looks like. And so the page numbers are up here, and I'm clicking forward. And here we are at the alphabet. So what I did to make this a little bit more fun and interactive for students was I actually played this video from the internet that I've been showing for a few years. It has a French comedian who just has a bunch of kids sitting around, and he has them sing his own version of the ABCs with a baseball bat, like he's threatening them in a fun way, I swear. Everybody's laughing, and they sing this little ditty and they dance around. This is a really good reference for students who need to listen at home over and over again. So when you click on this part of the vText, it will open up that part of the text, and then you can click on the letters, and then you can listen to what they sound like in French.
A. L'arrobase.
So a little challenge that I see here is
B. Le ballon.
that, there we go. Like arrobas, in English, we would normally use animals or something cute, but here it gives like the @ in an email address, which is useful, but it might not be as user-friendly. But I really like that this exists and that it's here. And as you can see, after I introduce the song, I show the kids this resource so that they can practice and how to use the site to listen to each of the letters. Then I would do a little activity like this, in which the students are asked to listen to these words and repeat them, or listen to these words and how they're spelled and then repeat them. And then after doing a couple of interactive activities in which I guide the students through practice, they would do independent practice. And when you click here, you are led to an activity in which you listen to the audio.
1. Je m'appelle Matisse.
And so you would try to spell Matisse and listen for the letters.
M-A-T-H-I-S.
And so if that's too fast, if you're not presenting to the class, and if you give the kids headphones with a microphone, they can click here and they can choose their playback speed. So they can go as low as a quarter speed, which is very slow. Oftentimes I will introduce things at a 0.75 speed, which is kind of nice, 3/4 speed. That seems to be a good one. And I don't want to run overtime, and I feel like I am. So I'm going to pause here for any questions that folks might have.
I think Kristen had a question in the chat,
Okay, let me get to it.
just about, it just says, safe to assume that all grading happens within Canvas, or how does that work?
Yeah, so the way that that works is here. So when you go to the super site, you can click on grades, and I'll see if I could share here. Okay. And so it doesn't happen in Canvas. it will happen if you go to grade and then you click on grading. And then you will see the items that need to be graded. And you click on that. And then there is a button that you have to push in order to push the grade back to Canvas. So there's a button here that says start grading, but then you could also grade question by question, student by student, or you could even do spot check. So if you don't want to have to grade every single item that the students put in, because that would be a lot of activities, you could just do random spot check, and then you could choose how many students you want to spot check.
And
But
when you say push back to Canvas, like you were saying, if you had it categorized, let's say by outcomes, for example, if we were to say, these are my reporting categories, and I'm going to label my categories on this site the same as Canvas, when you push it back, will it match?
No, it's not that. At this point, I'm not aware of it being aligned to our standards, but you can rename it so that it would be easily identifiable if you wanted to rename the activities. So in that way you could, but it wouldn't automatically fall into those categories. Like if you were to pull up that standard and
Mhm.
say, okay, how is my student doing with this standard only in Canvas? It wouldn't align like that.
You'd have to manually do that back in Canvas.
Yes, and then add it to Synergy for report cards if you want to use anything there.
Okay.
Yeah.
Cool, thanks.
Hey, Claire, sorry, I have
Okay.
a series of questions, but I'll start off with this first question. So you talked about how the authentic text was not embedded in the grammar part or the lesson.
Mhm.
Did I read that correctly in your slide when you were talking about the culture or the authentic text?
Yeah, so if somebody else has experience with some other levels or maybe a different language, maybe that might be different. But in my experience, so I'll go to the V text and I'll show you what my experience is. So as you can see here, this is really not a great example because it's the very beginning. So let me just continue to La famille et les copains, for example. So as we continue here, you will see, some pictures, and you'll see some curriculum created text between students. You'll see the family tree, which can be a little bit problematic, but with a little care, it can be taught well, as we know. So as we click through, you'll see that there's not authentic text or authentic videos. These are all created by Vista. And yeah, they're created. So for example, there is a graph here, but it's been, again, created for the curriculum. And at the higher levels, I did notice that they had video clips like from movies, which were really helpful. Maybe some posters for some events. But in French 1, it takes a while to come across one. Yeah, so for example, with
There's
the
one.
zapping, this is where I will often see it. So there will be a video. And to be honest, I haven't clicked on this one, for example. But when I do,
Bonjour, je m'appelle Aya, j'ai 14 ans, j'habite à Tunisie dans un village qui s'appelle.
so this is an interview with Aya in Tunisia, and I don't know if this was created by Vista or if this comes from someplace else. But I do know that in the other levels that le zapping will often pull from like a little news segment on something. Like there was a really great one on raclette in Switzerland, which is like the scraped beef dish. And it was about the resurgence in popularity of raclette in Switzerland and abroad. But yeah, for level 1, it's lacking.
Okay. And then is this curriculum here, with this company, is it adaptive for like heritage speakers of the language? Or would you need to supplement a lot?
So in my experience with French speaking students who speak French at home, they have been okay with this. They do tend to be advanced. We don't really keep them in French 1 or 2 typically. They will start usually at French 3 or French 4.
Okay.
So that might be where we differ a little bit from the Spanish classes. I'm not sure. I'm not an authority on
Okay.
that. But when my French speaking students are in French 3, they do seem to be engaged enough because they are interested in reading a lot, and there's topic specific vocabulary that they might not know.
Mhm.
And a lot of them express a desire to become better writers in French and to become aware of the speaking rules. Like, why are they saying this sentence this way? Why do they, say the subject first and then the verb second, but then sometimes it gets switched around and inverted. They enjoy knowing those rules. So I feel like this is adequate for levels 3 and 4 if you happen to have native French speakers in the class who have not had a lot of prior exposure in a French classroom.
And then for the assessment piece, I saw you show like the, for taking a quiz, or are the assessments all built into the curriculum, or would you have to create some of the formative and summative assessments? Well, the
So-
summative.
Yeah, so this program comes with assessments, and so you can actually, and I haven't done this yet, so I'm not going to be an authority on that, but apparently you can create your own assessments from a bank of questions and manipulate things. So that's kind of nice. I guess any teacher with years of experience would like to assess in the way that they want to assess. And I feel like this is a very traditional way of assessing.
Mhm.
There are a few projects included, but it would be up to the teacher to create those rubrics when assessing those projects. But as far as the assessments that come with the program go, it would be done, I guess, essentially on a percentage. And I know that that's not the direction that we all necessarily want to go. So there would have to be a lot of adapting, I think. There's a lot to work with. There's a good skeleton, but it needs a lot of work from an experienced teacher to flesh out the rest.
All right. Thank you.
I know you have to head out, Claire, so I don't want to keep you longer. And Claire also has a partner here, Mary Alice. She did the Spanish curriculum using Vista. So we can also ask Mary Alice some of the same questions about this specific publisher.
Yeah, Claire, that was so thorough, though. There was things I didn't even know. Thank you so much.
Yeah,
I was taking notes. Which
Good.
brings me to the idea that like whatever we do, adopt, obviously we're going to have staff development and whatnot, but I think it would be really beneficial for whoever had piloted this textbook to really sit down as a team and go through, because there's like 6 things on here I didn't even know about.
Yeah.
Thank you, Claire.
Yeah, thank you, Claire. Feel free to go whenever you need to. Thank you so
Okay.
much. Yeah,
I do down, but thank
Yep.
you so much.
Au revoir.
thank you.
Gracias.
I
Sorry for my
will
bad
address a couple of the questions that came up. One about heritage speakers, because there is a thing where it has lesson plans that you can adapt to. I haven't needed to use it yet. Much like Claire said, I piloted for Spanish 1. I had 2 sections of Spanish 1, and I don't have any heritage speakers in those class that needed accommodations. But they do have a setup for that. So I'll share my screen and just show you what it looks like. Also, I wanted to show you, it's the other thing that was different with Claire's presentation is I only have my kids get into the textbook this way from the launch site. And so it's so intuitive. It's just really easy for them to find what they do. They click on their book, and then they have a dashboard that they use. But let me show you what where to see. This is an example of how the different activities, you know, like Claire was saying with the apple. For me, this is such a breath of fresh air that we can assign things that are auto graded. One thing she didn't mention is when the kids do their activities, whatever you've assigned, then, which by the way, are really easy to assign. So I would just like check, check, check. And then I go to the assign button and I put the date, homework category. And then when they enter the launch site, there's a blue start button and it takes them from one activity to the next to the next. And as soon as they finish one activity, it will show them what they got wrong. You can manipulate your settings however you want. So I have, you know, as many times as they want to retake something they can, and whatever they got wrong is highlighted in red. So they have the opportunity to ask questions about what, you know, how to fix it and then retake it and resubmit it. So that's pretty sweet. But I don't want to get off track. I wanted to show you the lesson plans. Let me see where that is. I also agree with Claire that I have supplemented quite a bit with games and songs. Okay, I'm just going to go maybe a little bit out of order because I want to show you another thing we were worried about at our school is that, are we going to be aligned with IB? And this is, I don't know why it's black, but can you guys see, this is a graphic that they have with IB themes and the AP themes. So per unit, these are ways that they're addressing the IB themes.
Are you able to zoom in just a little?
Pretty comprehensive. Yeah.
There you go. Yeah, that's good.
So IB is the this column, and then AP is that column. And, you know, obviously the whatever textbook we pick up is not going to have the same trajectory as our current curriculum. So that will be another need in PD that we work at our schools to make sure we're covering. Like, for example, this book, this level 1 book, they introduce the past tense starting in chapter 7, which we don't normally do until second year. And I don't know pacing wise what is realistic to even get through in the first year. We've been using like as sort of a base as the Expressate. We use Expressate Uno in both level 1 and level 2. So anyways, there will be a need for work at our schools that way.
And then Mary Alice, there's a question in the chat. Just
Oh, yeah.
about the diversity in the Spanish curriculum. And even as you're scrolling through that list there, it does, the question is, as in countries predominantly represented, cultural backgrounds of people featured, etc. So even when you were scrolling through, we can kind of see different, that there's mention of different, and as you're scrolling through now.
Yeah.
So if you can kind of just address that, that'd be great.
Yeah, I have not noticed a lack. And in fact, I wrote down what Claire said about the, that was probably my biggest takeaway about what I love about this book is the authentic resources. And that even in the level 1 book, so maybe it's better in the Spanish text, there are really cool examples. Let me show you guys one. This is a commercial. So it's called Video Mundo. And it's just a commercial. So, but everything, it seems to me like everything's really purposeful. So this video is really cute. It's a commercial, but then it aligns to the textbook, page 74, 75. And there's previewing activities during the video activities, and then, you know, comprehension questions to do at the end.
Hola.
anyway, it's very, very cool because it's just a commercial, you know? So I feel like there is quite a bit of realia in the Spanish text. Nothing, I mean, we didn't have anything like this before, so I guess I'm kind of blown away by it. And then the other thing I think is relatable for kids are these little blogs. I think the students will really like them. They're called Un Chinde, and they follow this. They're kind of like TikTok-ish. Let me show you one.
Hola, me llamo Adriana María y estoy muy contenta porque este es nuestro primer video. ¿Qué pasa?
Uy, esto está mal.
So again, and see how it's page 72, 73. So whatever you show has some activities built in to go along with it. And to Claire's point about assessments, I did give an assessment I did the same thing. I did the Unidad Preliminar, and it was the first sort of pre-chapter. And I ended up supplementing quite a bit to make it a more well-rounded test. And I think they'll be better in the later units. I've decided I'm going to continue using this text for the year, just because it has so many great resources to go along with. I'm going to have to jump around a bit to keep in line with the Southridge curriculum, but I really like the things they have to offer. I wanted to show you an example of a grammar video. Remember in Exprésate how you used to have the bean people? So here they have this teacher that kind of goes through and
Hola estudiantes y bienvenidos a la clase de español.
anyway, she goes through, and it was really clear explanation. I always have my students write like
In
aha
English,
moments
We can
after whatever it is that I've taught. Will watch the video and they will come up with things like they said. One thing they learned from this particular video was I didn't tell them about how you can abbreviate usted and ustedes when you're writing it. So that was helpful. But anyways, the kids were even engaged with this video. The end of each unit has these final de la unidad, and this is aligned with what we said we're doing next year, right? So interpretive, interpersonal, and presentational, and these are project ideas. So to Claire's point, I didn't realize there weren't rubrics for these, but they seem really well-rounded. This is the interpretive one. Analyzing a painting by Frida Kahlo. And then the interpersonal one, this is one of those partner chats she talked about, where you are going to bring your own painting and describe it with another person and record your responses. And I agree with her. These are so much fun. The kids really enjoy doing these. I was going to show you some student exemplars, but she already touched on it, so I won't bother. This one is the presentational one. So this is like a comparison of a painting in relation to your family, or a comparison. So it seems like the foundation is there anyhow. And then I really like this auto-evaluación, where they can check how well do they think they did for each of these things. I always show this at the beginning of a unit so that they know what they're going to be learning. And then again at the end. Do you guys have questions while I go quickly through my notes? Yeah, I wrote down that as far as for the best practices and guiding principles, for this text, I'm most impressed with like the authentic text, digital resources, communicative competence, and purposeful and equitable assessment. I also like how it's very clearly defined the different learning targets. And, oh, I know, this is something I should show you. So in addition to assigning activities, you can create your own content. And so I learned how, I used to do this in Canvas anyways, but I made sort of 5 questions for them to record answers to. So Hola, ¿cómo te llamas? ¿Cómo se escribe tu nombre? ¿Cuándo es tu cumpleaños? Okay. What I did is I based that because one of the virtual chats, which is something I also want to show you, is a different type of activity where you listen to the native speaker, and Claire touched on it. Oh no, sorry. But it's just really nice because it's a native speaker. Everything's native speaker, and you can show the audio text. You can also change your settings so they don't see that, but I actually like that.
¿Cómo eres tú?
And they had to respond. So there's several
¿Cómo
of
es tu
these
casa?
for each unit. And the other thing I would say is that in general, I have been using the hard copies of the textbooks during class, and I'll project the v-text. And then the students have told me that they really like that option, that they can see the physical textbook, and definitely keeps them more focused instead of possible distractions on the Chromebooks. And then what's also nice is, you know, like Claire showed, you can click on these hyperlinks and show videos to them in class. So they'll do some work in the textbook while we're in class, and I'll project the different pages we're working on. And then at the end of class is when I'll give them time to do the assigned activities. And I found that that's really helpful too, that because they have a lot of questions as they're working through them. And you can be there to address them. But then at home, if they want to get more practice, they can by going to the v-text, and they can redo all of those activities as many times as they want. So the other thing that maybe Claire didn't talk about was the grading aspect. I just wanted to show you what it looked like. So you can view by due date. And what I have been doing is assigning anywhere between 10 and 20 activities a week. And like I said, all of it is assigned during class, and we have class time to mostly get it done. And I tell them that they have a goal of getting 70% or better towards for their score. And that way they'll redo them until they do, hopefully. But excellent practice, variety of activities where they can do multiple choice or fill in the blank or listening, recording your voice. So I just think it's very comprehensive. That's everything I think I have, unless you guys have questions.
Mary Alice, I have a question.
Yeah.
The activities that you can assign, is it sort of like Go formative? Like, can you, like, there are just a variety, you said there was a variety of different stuff you could have them do?
Yes, very much so. Some are image-based, some are practice pronunciation. Definitely, I think a rich variety. Practice reading, practice writing, listening, speaking.
And then there's another question in the chat from Caleb. I don't know if you saw that. For the Spanish textbook, are the pop culture celebrity references generally current?
Oh, that's such a great question.
Yeah.
Yeah, because I was laughing about the Celine Dion. And we haven't gotten into it yet very much, I suppose, and so that's something I supplement for sure in my day-to-day teaching. And I wonder, let me see if I can see any good examples. Like I said, so I just finished Unidad Preliminar, and then I'm going to go into, I'm sort of piecemealing the first chapter. And at least in this first chapter, I mean, they go into art a lot with Frida Kahlo and Diego Rivera. Zoe's were Mexico. Let's see if they mention any. Or here, why don't I share my screen so you can see? Quinceañera. Multi-generation family. One thing I'm trying not to do is compare it like, wow, it really seems like we cover a lot in the first chapter compared to, say, Exprésate, because who cares, right? We're moving forward. But I do definitely, again, go back to that idea that we're going to have some, here's the culture reference to the voladores. We'll definitely need some staff development time district-wide and within our schools to realign our curriculums.
And I think Rachel mentioned, is it the news that's more, it's going to keep it more up to date?
Oh, if I have time, I'm going to show you that because it is really awesome.
And I think they said that that's the one that, I mean, they can't obviously go back and reprint their textbooks every year.
Yes,
what
yes.
Rachel
Okay,
said,
let me show
they
you
try
that
to
how
keep-
cool this is.
Yeah, what they try to keep up to date is always adding new content to the news.
Okay, watch this, you guys. This is really, really cool. So like Claire said, you can do by ACTFL level. And I think this would be excellent even too for like a sub day. So same thing, when I click on this, you're going to see there's previewing, during the viewing and post viewing activities. It's a YouTube video. And so it's a little background in English, probably because of the ACTFL level. And then before you watch, sí or no, and then while you watch, true or false, and then after you watch, and then I'll show you the video itself. So what I would do is slow it down
Espacial
and
Diana
put it with
Espacial Diana
captions.
Trujillo, nacida y criada en Cali, es una de los 7 nuevos integrantes del cuadro de directores de
Already
vuelo
has
de la NASA. Este equipo se encargará de supervisar las operaciones de las misiones de la Estación
But I would
Espacial
see how
Internacional, de la
fast I
tripulación
can
comercial y
remember.
del programa
Let's say
Artemis.
really slow it down.
El presidente Iván Duque la felicitó desde su cuenta de Twitter
But anyways,
por
if you
este
assign
gran...
this in online and they have headphones in class, they can replay it as many times as they need to. So I just think that's really rich and really good point, Carol, about how they can keep those updated. And so by different months, I mean, there's just a ton, you know, of activities. That's just for September. So, and then you can see how you could probably align it with the themes for IB. Pretty cool.
So they did the alignment to IB already?
Yeah, that infographic that I showed you guys was that they created.
That's good. Yeah, that's awesome.
Yeah.
Can I ask a question?
Yeah,
And
yeah.
this is kind of a one that you maybe don't know the answer to, but you were talking about how you had to supplement quite a bit with songs and games and stuff. Do you feel like that is like because
Necessary.
because of the textbook, or is that how you teach? And that
Yeah.
would happen regardless of what textbook you would use.
Right.
Does that make sense? Because like,
Yeah, definitely. It has made me really question, like, oh, should I introduce this silly song that I've always done? You know, because it's not a part of, and I don't even really know why I do it actually, but that I believe sometimes when they're singing a silly song, they'll remember their vocab better. And so to your question, I think I probably would do that no matter what. Yeah. But I don't know if having a different text, I will need to use it less. It'll be interesting to see.
thanks. I
Yeah,
was just
great
curious
question.
about that. I mean, I think probably if a textbook comes with lots of fun activities, then maybe you wouldn't have to, but it also seems like the textbook doesn't know your students in front of you and what they'll respond
Right.
to well
Right.
either. So
Yeah, no, that's an excellent question.
I have another question, Mary Alice.
Edward.
I remember at the beginning, we were just talking about this in the World Language Meeting. I remember a year ago or so, I got a couple emails from teachers that were like, whatever we choose in terms of a textbook, it needs to be something that has it all included. We don't want to have to, we don't have to be coming up with all these extra things. We want the thing to have ancillaries, and we want it to have tests, and we want it to have listening activities. It should all be built in. Do you feel like that the Vista passes that test?
I mean, I really do. Again, my point of comparison, so the whole time I've been teaching it started with Dime, and then we went to Exprésate, and now, a new option. This one seems like, oh my gosh, there's so much. So I'm really impressed with, and again, going back to that authentic digital and video, audio resources. To me, it's very rich. So I do think it's all inclusive.
Thank you, Mary Alice. I don't want to cut you off, but I do want to give some time to Edward and Kim to present their experience with Wayside.
Yes.
So thank you so much.
Thank you.
So good.
Harold, would it be okay if I go first? I can just probably take 15 minutes since I am the only one doing the heritage speakers, right? Is there anybody?
I might ask you to make it 5.
5
to 10, because there'll be 3 of you. So I want you to
just need to get ready. I have the the Spanish speaking families meeting today. So I need to go to the other building.
Yeah, we do want to hear your experience with tejidos. So please.
Okay, I'll go ahead and share my screen. So I'll do it quick. And I'm not sure if, let me see where I am. No. Just 1 second. All right, so I'm going to try to just quickly go to my slides and then share with you what I have, and then go to the next sharing with you the website. The Spanish curriculum for dual language, I'm doing the Wayside for tejidos, and this is a 2013 edition. So that was one thing that made me wonder whose voice is and isn't represented in this decision. I think the curriculum for heritage speakers, it talks by itself, is for emergent bilingual students. It aligns with the Beaverton School District equity policy. We have especially number 3, 6, 7, and 9 that you can explore by yourselves later. This decision access, I think it's based on students, it's a deductive method, and it really touching all what the students can or want to share about their own experiences, and then it just adds more. It provides opportunities for all levels of Spanish, whatever they come with from the heritage speaker world, if they had dual language before or not. And if you are a teacher that can differentiate, is going to meet all of the expectations of the students to level them in the first year. And I think it's going to help for lining up for the IB. I'm going to skip the mini lesson, and I'll come back to that one in a moment. Student voices. I just want to share with you some of the, I told the students, I said, I don't want to be the one that makes the decision for this text. I want to hear your voices. So I'm going to read a few of the nos and sees. One says, es muy largo para leer, tiene muchas palabras que a lo mejor haga que pierdan interés a las personas. No me gusta porque los héroes se mueren. Su amigo de Federico García Lorca muere. So they are worried about, they don't like because of what is happening in the text, but they all had a lot of yeses, and they looked carefully to different hilos, and this is basically what they're saying. Some of them said it's a very long chapter, or some of them said, they gave me pages, no, la forma en que traduce el tema es muy aburrido. Yo creo que hay demasiadas preguntas. Hay información que no es necesaria. So they gave me, these are their notes, but their C's are longer than their notes. So prompts and cons is engaging for the students. And for the dual language teachers, it is easier to plan and scope from 9 to 12. And I'm saying this because in IB, Like right now, we're just finishing the unit for Federico Garcia Lorca, and this is already included here. And that will help with that. Unique features of Wayside. I'm gonna start sharing with you that piece right here. And let me just move my bar down so it doesn't cover. It starts from the modules where I have it. Some of the lessons that I have, and I think what I have here is just the assessment for this unit. And it has interpersonal, interpretive, presentational. All of the units have everything. It has rubrics. And I had shared with all of you in the documents that we were putting some of the work from the students. I'm just gonna pick on the first one, and you all can read this. Well, this might not be a good one. I talked with that student about that. This is Mario, and they all started about their families. They all made connections. Then they had to record their podcast, and they just made it through. It has all the rubrics. It has all the activities here on the side. It has an assessment at the end. The one thing that worries me is that it is a text. It is a textbook. And being a 2013 edition, how are they going to keep it up to date? That worries me. Other than that, the students were engaged. They all seem to like the curriculum. They all think that it meets their needs. How does this curriculum align with best practices? It has and definitely has part of the equitable assessment because it meets the students where they are. It is multilingual, but it's in there. It talks about all the countries. It has a little bit of every single country. And I really love that because I have some Guatemaltecos and some Salvadorians that are very nationalist. And when they see their country, they feel very good and they felt represented. And it was like a magic connection. Authentic resources and global perspective is included in all the lessons. And it just adds to what the students have to share from their own experiences. It is one thing that I have here, my last slide is that for some students that we are getting in the classroom, if they have to use the computer, we need to find the supports. And I already shared that also in my previous meeting with the superintendent. When I have 36 students and I need to teach them how to turn on a computer, how to get to Canvas, how to open a Google Doc, it is very difficult. But having a text in the class, having a textbook, this is what they were using to give me their feedback. And these are all their C's and notes on the side. This is all what they have to say. And I can just scan it and send it to you, Carol.
Yeah, that would be great.
And the other thing that I have here in my last sticky notes, everywhere in the text, it shows respect for gender. They always say el joven, la joven. So there is a lot of acknowledgement of the times we're living. So, and modern artists, something about where Lady Gaga inspired all of her outfits and everything that she does from Salvador Dali in Spain. And then they get upset because they don't like Ricky Martin. They like better Selena Gomez, and they all have a lot of opinions. Thank you for listening.
Thank you. I'm sorry if I feel like we had to rush you through that, but I also have questions. You know, there isn't a counterpart to you in this meeting tonight as far as someone else using the Wayside curriculum for a lit comp class or a heritage speaker class. Someone using the Vista curriculum because you're using on Wayside. So the Vista kind of comparative that we were looking at was Galeria, right? So I don't know if you've had experience with Galeria or if you've chatted with other people on the team as far as what their experience has been with Galeria.
I haven't talked to the ones that are doing Galeria at all.
Yeah,
we have
that's fine. Yeah.
And yeah, I haven't seen them.
Okay, that's fine.
Galeria is part of Vista.
Yeah,
correct?
exactly.
And Vista all has used the same platform, I guess. that's my experience teaching with Vista in the past.
Yeah. Yeah, I was just curious if you had any experience with that. So awesome. Yeah, thank you for sharing all of that. That's really important. And it's good to see that our heritage speakers are also able to see themselves in the curriculum and access some of that content and be engaged with that. So thank you for that and for your work with your students this year. I really want to be able to stop by and see your classroom in action as well.
You're welcome anytime. The superintendent came last week. Dr. Valderas was here. He just like last week on Thursday, I believe he was visiting. So he was just sitting here.
Thank you. All right. So Edward and Kim, any volunteers to go next?
Go ahead, Edward.
Okay, sure, be happy to. Just a moment here. Let me pull up my stuff here then. All right. Okay. So I'll share my screen. Here we go. Okay. All right, actually just a second here. Let me go back to the beginning. There we go. Okay, you guys see that all right?
Yep, that looks good.
All right, so yeah, I'm piloting the Wayside Entre Culture 2. So my second year French class is started with this textbook, and we've been using it for about, I guess, 2 months or so now by this time. I guess kind of where I'd like to start with this discussion is that I think that Wayside does a very good job of following and checking the boxes for the position paper and our kind of best practices, the things that we researched as a cadre. I think Wayside does a very good job of doing. Grammar and vocabulary are embedded in lessons. They're not separate. They explore a variety of different Francophone cultures and places. And those are not seen as like an aside about a certain place, like, like here's a little cultural reading about this particular area. It's like, this is the activity, and the activity like is situated right now. All our activities are situated in Réunion, which is an island off the coast of Madagascar in Africa. And so like in this chapter that we're doing right now, we're planning a welcome committee because a group of them is coming to visit us. And so, the very beginning of the chapter was all about, learning about this place. And now we're and then that cultural piece is threaded throughout the activities and the things that we do. This is definitely encourages a global mindset. In that way, I really like this text because we're thinking about, I've never taught about Réunion before. It's never come up for me in a textbook before. And I really think that's exciting. In terms of assessments, and we'll talk about this a little bit later, 3 assessment criteria are used in the textbook tests: presentational, interpersonal, and interpretational. And those are the same ones that we're planning to use here at the Beaverton next year. The tests draw on students' total linguistic repertoire by asking complex questions, which in some ways I believe are a little bit beyond what they can do. I think from my perspective, I struggle with how much should I tell them about the test in advance, and how much should I help them sort of teach to the test versus kind of letting them struggle, I guess, with that. And lesson design makes it easier to stay on the target language throughout most of the lesson. And let's see. Okay, here we go. The online textbook and practice activities provide multiple opportunities for students to see the material. It's really a lot of repetition. One thing I like is that, many of the lessons have a listening activity or a video blog. and then you're kind of, checking off something, or you're, listening for what you hear. And then, it's trying to kind of reiterate those patterns over rote memorization. As Lucinda mentioned, it's a deductive way of teaching. That is, it's not sort of giving it to you right away. It's kind of allowing you to kind of glean it through the lesson. And I think that's a real question that that is a question that we should potentially ask ourselves. That is, what type of approach do we want to teach? How do we want to teach kids? Do we want to teach them kind of, okay, we're going to front load the vocabulary and the grammar, and then we're going to have you write some sentences? Or on the other hand, are we going to kind of just sort of present you with these things and expect that over time you're going to be assimilating and picking that up? Test questions reference students' full linguistic repertoire. Students are asked to reference their own cultures while comparing and contrasting to target language and culture. We do a lot of comparing, and I'll show you that in the target, or in the sample lesson here in a couple slides. Here we go. So the sample lesson that I'm going to show you here is the lesson that we're currently in. The lesson is about places around school and staff who work there. Carol saw some of this lesson. This is a picture of students around a table making a map of Southridge High School. And then you can kind of see on the table there, they've drawn the football fields in green and the baseball field, I think it was. And then they labeled the different parts of the school, and then they identified staff who work in each location. So in French, we went through, what do you call the librarian, the secretary, the teacher, et cetera. And we added those people to the map. This was a really collaborative activity. And I thought it went really well. This was sort of my idea. This did not come from the textbook, but I used this way to kind of incorporate the vocabulary and help them to kind of put the ideas together in a way that was kind of collaborative. So then the next day we went in and we were still in groups. We brainstormed a list of adjectives to describe different people. Some of these adjectives were from last year's, units, and others were from this year's units. And then I took some pictures from the from Southridge website, and we associated the real people and then their jobs in French. And then there's also kind of, in terms of the classroom routine, there's quite a bit of, there are some good online practice activities, including flashcards and other activities. There's often a listening or a video with a worksheet to check or write down what they hear. We often do a group think, and then there's speaking practice to apply what they've learned. And as I said, this was sort of introductory lesson about La Réunion and high school. So this is an example of kind of the online flashcards. The online flashcards are a little bit clunky to access. For example, they're not all in one deck, if you will. Like, I would have to assign about 3 different decks. So there's like a deck per day. That's a little different than what I have done in the past, where all the vocabulary is in one big list and you kind of work your way through it. So in terms of assigning that, it's a little bit more clunky. This is an example of kind of the online textbook, and you can see the video is embedded here, and you can listen to it, and then the online textbook is sort of behind here. This too is a little bit difficult to navigate. It takes a little bit to kind of get used to. You kind of have to click on this thing, and then the video kind of pops out. I did a little video of a couple girls kind of comparing my old tests to the new test. I I think I'm going to skip that, but you can kind of see the picture here of sort of, there was a listening section. This is using BND, which is a textbook that I'm using right now in French 1, and I used last year in French 2. You know, it has some pictures, and there's a listening section where you have to say, you know, what picture are they talking about? And then there's another section where you have to check off what the person bought at the store or something like that. The assessments, I'm going to kind of, let's see. I'm going to pop out of this and go to the actual textbook for a second and show you what the current test that I'm getting ready to give looks like. So in the textbook, they give a little heads up of what the test is going to be. The tests are, the individual kind of quizzes are called j'avance in French. And one thing has like a reading, and then you have to associate what picture is being talked about. Then you have to kind of correct some sentences that are about the text that you just read. There's a writing section where you talk about your favorite place at the school. I feel like it's not actually as demanding as it could be. For example, it only asks for one place and one staff member. So really that's only like 3 sentences. You don't really have to write that much. And I actually am bumping up the amount of requirement. And then probably the most challenging section is the speaking section. And this one feels to me like it's kind of a beyond their ability level for my students. You're nominating staff members to serve on a welcoming committee. You and your partner should recommend 2 staff members before selecting one to nominate. I had to kind of front load a fair amount of vocabulary to get them to have that kind of conversation. I think they could have talked about individual people at the school fairly well, but in terms of having that kind of dialogue with another student about, well, what do you think? Oh, I think this. And okay, I agree with you. Like, we didn't really have that kind of vocabulary at all. So I had to kind of give them that. So that felt like it certainly causes them to go, you know, beyond what they would. It's pretty complex. It's a pretty complex task. So I like that. But I feel like a little bit I have to teach to the test in order so that they are successful. Let's see here. So why should we adopt this curriculum? I think that, like I said before, it uses deductive reasoning to encourage language experimentation and creativity. Wayside scored higher on 6 of 8 criteria in the curriculum scorecards that we did at the very beginning of the kind of pilot. It fulfills most, if not all, the best practices set forth by the cadre, and it certainly is multi-ethnic and looks at language from a global perspective, and not just as a French person, like visiting global cultures. I think that is a fair assessment of some of the Vista material, as it's sort of like a French person visiting, as opposed to, you know, really kind of maybe digging a little bit deeper. Okay, thanks for listening. And Kim, what do you want to, I'll leave it to you.
Thank you, Edward. That's great.
Yeah.
Okay. Well, I'm going to jump in. I don't necessarily have the PowerPoints that everyone did, but I will kind of navigate through what I've done with the site. In class, I have primarily used the physical textbook in class, kind of like what Mary Alice did with Vista. And then when I've wanted the students to go on to the Wayside site, then I send them on thanks, Sean. I will. I'm Spanish. I will send them on to the the Wayside site for the activities. So let me share my screen so you can kind of see what those things look like. Get things situated. I'm so sorry. So when students are going through the super site or through the site, they go into my class and go through modules. And I have them go directly into a new window to start with the class. And one of the things that the students have noticed is that it goes directly into their textbook. And so I always have to remind them that when they're going into the site that they have to click on assignments, and the default is that they're going to have a calendar. And so one of the things that we have found, and that has made it a lot easier for students, is to know that they have to go into list mode to see what they need to do in order to make it easier. One of the things that I have found that I have liked about for Wayside Spanish is that that there has been a lot of good diversity throughout the text. That they're showing they show a good variety of countries and a good variety of different peoples and cultures and cultural references throughout the text, which has been interesting for the students. The infographics and the information that the students are seeing has been quite text heavy. They haven't seen as much in videos and information. I'm wondering if that gets comes more later because I was doing the lección preliminar, which is the introductory unit. So that I'm wondering if it just doesn't have as much of those type of activities in that introductory unit as it might later in the text. And so that was one thing that the students did comment on, is that it seemed like it was very text heavy for those type of activities, and they found that they would have liked more video engagement and that they would find visual things more engaging than just reading about it. So I don't know if that's something that that, like I said, would come later. But the flex text is one that is very interactive, and this is something that I do use quite a bit with my showing up on the screen with students. It's very easy to manipulate to show with audio activities and that sort of thing. When you click here, it just pops right up, and you can play the audio through the sound system or whatever happens to be there for you. Let's see. Like Edward was saying, the seems like the Entre Culturas and the French program, because I'm gonna murder the French, it seems very similar in its design. And so I'm pretty sure that that we're seeing a lot of the same things that Edward already presented in his PowerPoint. One thing I would love to see a little bit better is that some of the students were saying that they were having some issues with some of the audios that came up with some of the authentic blogs that they found them a little difficult to hear at times, or that they found them hard to understand. And so, or even if you slowed down the speed on the audios, those were a little difficult. When we as a
audio so you could show us.
Let me see if I can find it. It was, I know one of them was the let's see. Yeah, here we go. So it was, I know this was one that they had an issue with. So here we go.
Soy Melissa de Colombia. Mi nombre se deletrea Melissa y mi país se deletrea Colombia.
Hola a todos, me llamo Lucas. Mi nombre se deletrea ISAAC. Tengo 15 años. Soy de Costa Rica, que es un país centroamericano.
Hola, soy Marina Ferreira Fernández, de Madrid, España. Mi nombre se escribe MARINA.
Hola, mi nombre es Cristian y vivo en México. Tengo 16 años y mi nombre se deletrea CHRISTIAN.
Hola, me llamo María Laura. Mi nombre se escribe MARIALAURA.
So they said, especially in the first part of it was where they had the most issues. The second part of it was a little easier. So in it, I know there was another one, and I don't remember exactly which one it was, but it was mainly some of the ones where they had the video bloggers, where they were kind of recording off of another audio source, and it wasn't a direct audio. Let's see. So the I know for us, we were kind of combining for at least for our school, and Christy and I were combining this unit and a different unit to make sure that we were covering the same material that we would normally cover for during our normal unit for the preliminary. And so we were pulling materials from multiple sources. And so our assessments did not actually come from here. We didn't use them. And one thing that we didn't realize when we were looking especially at the vocabulary was that if you look at some of this, was that they present some of the material with like, how do you spell? And they have a good amount of questions. But like here, they talk about calendar and the days of the week, but there's no questions. And so we needed, we realized that we had to go make sure that we included those questions and for the students and that sort of thing. And so we would definitely need to make sure that there was some alignment with departments. Because if you go back and then look at, this is at the end of the unit, if you go back and look at where they do present about that material, the questions are actually in the chapter. So there's some misalignment with the summary pages versus what's presented in the chapter. Let's see, let's see what else.
I'm gonna probably have to cut you off in about a minute, if that's okay.
Okay, no problem. The other thing that we really liked, like I said, we really liked the culture piece of this. We liked the integration of, let's see, what else did we really like? We really liked where there was those cultural comparisons of the home culture versus what was being studied in the chapter. And this, especially with the lección preliminar, it really was getting the students thinking about, why are they in Spanish? Why are they, what was their purpose for taking the course? So.
Awesome. Thank you, Kim. All right. Wow. That's a lot. I feel like we could kind of dig all night long too on both of these. Especially, I think there's so much to each of the publisher's resources, and so many different things that we could access, and so many different ways to approach our language acquisition with our students. So thank you. You can stop sharing your screen, and then we'll go back to
sorry about that.
No, that's fine. I'll go back to my slides real quick here so we kind of know where we're at. We only have about 4 minutes left this evening. So I feel like this was all, I mean, thumbs up if you think this was good to get to hear all of this and really see the difference and kind of some of the characteristics and the two.
Caleb asked about authentic source materials, not that I'm aware of. I haven't seen the authentic current news.
Yeah, I agree with that. I mean, there are, kind of texts, within the textbook, which are authentic, but I think they're written for the textbook for the most part.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, thanks for asking that, Caleb. Okay, I'm going to go back to our slides. I'm super glad we recorded this tonight, so I can send this out and we can really share what our teachers have shared with the entire project team and those who couldn't make it. So I do want to point out that we had the teachers fill out another survey just kind of at the end. And what I did is I put it together into sort of a summary of the teacher comments. So if you click on that, I'm not sure, let me just share my whole screen so that you're not just getting a portion of my screen. You can see what I'm clicking on as I go back and forth. Just regular desktop. Okay, so the teacher comments are on this. Hopefully everybody has access to it. Let's see. Okay, yeah, if you go to the second sheet, I think that might be the most helpful and the easiest to see, because as a group in our last cadre meeting, we talked about each guiding principle, and then we gave it a score, and then the teachers commented on that particular guiding principle and how it related to the Vista and Wayside curriculum for Spanish and French. So I also put the numbers there. As you can see, we are very close in numbers on both of these. So that's something I wanted everyone to have a chance to look at. And it seems like it's going to happen on your own, but you have that there. And then we also have, and I apologize that we did not get a break tonight. Hopefully you took care of yourselves as needed, but we needed to jump through all of that. We also have student feedback. We had more than 400 students take this particular survey, plus more from other surveys that teachers did that might not necessarily have been this general student feedback form. So I gave you the link to the feedback form where you'll see that many. The interesting thing about when you look at this form and we look at the responses, you'll notice, I can understand what the teachers are saying. All of these are positive, and this is both Wayside and Vista. I understand the textbook pages and what the online activities are asking me to do. I feel like I can do what they're asking me to do. This one, noticing a difference between last year and this is really only pertains to the students who actually took the same course the year before. My language is improving. You know, the majority is saying, yes, they feel like they're improving. And this is, again, with both publishers. So when you just look at these numbers, you kind of see that both publishers really are giving us some really good options for our students. So what I did is I went back and I went through and just put together the comments, a comments only version of this, so that you can see there's going to be about 80 for each roughly. So it'll take a little bit of time, but this student comments from Vista and student comments from Wayside, just the comments themselves. Since the numbers were so similar, I just wanted everyone to have access to the student comments. So those are there on that slide. And again, kind of just recentering ourselves. And then I want to mention that our next steps, this is why all of this content is so important. The next steps is investigating on our own. And for project team members who weren't able to make it tonight, they'll see this video and also do some investigating on their own, reflecting on our process so far, centering the student experience. And then our next meeting on December 7th, we're going to need a quorum. So I might just be making personal phone calls and asking everybody to make sure they watch this video, consider everything that we've done so far, go back to some of the slides, and then we will need a quorum when we come. So if our total members are roughly 24, which I might need to make that smaller since if Toshiko can't count and I can't count, but I'll do that later. Then the quorum would be, we need 13 people, and the majority for a quorum would then be 7 as far as the voting part goes on this. So you also have in the slide deck those resources at the end, the master document plus the how to access Vista and how to access Wayside if you want those. And that is it. And I want to get everybody out of here because it's 6:32. But lots to think about. And next meeting, we might do a little bit of a recap. But then it really is, we're going to need quorum, and we're going to need to vote as a project team. So thank you to our teacher presenters, and thanks for everyone else that's here tonight. Really appreciate your time. So have a lovely evening.
Just one thing, there's a couple links that are actually say I need I don't have access to from
Okay,
your
tell me which ones,
deck.
I'll make sure.
Let me see, which one was I looking at?
Actually, I'll just go back and make them all. They should just be anyone with the link can view, hopefully.
Yeah, there was a few. I was like the teacher comment, I think, or maybe the original form wasn't available.
Okay.
Yeah, the one that says original form's not available. And then the student feedback too. So yeah,
Thank you.
there's a couple that are just not available.
Okay, I'll go back in and make sure that access is changed on those. Thank you.
Thank you.
Awesome. Have a good night.
Thank
Good
you
night.
all.
Take care.
Thanks, Caleb. Good to have you here.
Thank you, Caleb. Take care.
Bye, Sean. Bye, Sean.
Any news for us, Caleb, on your application? I can't hear you for some reason. Is
Oh
it
yeah, I
in-
can't hear him.
I don't know if your sound is working. I'm going to stop recording.